Welcome back to Film-Studio-Taku-in-Japan. Today I am going to show you a little bit how much detail is really hiding in a GFX file, particularly the GFX 100 S. It might as well be the 102 or the 100S2. They're basically the same resolution and quality. So let's just get into this. I've already done one edit here, and I'm gonna try to do something a little bit different with this as far as the color scheme, just to keep my mind awake. But really, primarily, like I say, this is to show you just how much detail is hiding in these files, and it's something I struggle with because I've been used to, I started with Micro Four Thirds and moved up to Nikon full frame camera, and in those cameras, when you push things too far, there's a hard limit you hit where it's pretty obvious, especially after you've been editing for a while, that it just looks too crunchy and just looks like shit. But it's not so obvious sometimes with GFX files. So let's get right into this and show you what I'm talking about. We're just gonna, before we add any styles, we're just gonna go here and actually do a manual adjust on this image. So the first thing I am going to do is I'm just going to, rather than just adjust the exposure, you can see a little bit of highlight clipping here. We're just going to go right into the shadows, and highlights will come in a little bit if those highlights don't disappear. Okay, so we're going to take the shadows down a little bit, not too much, because less is more. You can always work it more later. Of course, you could go back and undo things, but generally speaking, I like to just do each one a little bit. I mean, it's not tiny amount. I mean, we're looking at minus 20-ish on those, but compared to just dropping, for example, the black way down, I mean, you lose any and all detail back there. So something like that for now. And now we have these highlights still here. We can just directly attack the highlights, or we can do it in the white here. Going all the way down doesn't really do much, so we're not going to attack the white. We're going to go to the highlights. I just adjusted my highlights. It used to be set a little bit lower to where it would show clipping in DaVinci, or excuse me, in Capture One here, and Darktable was much more forgiving, which again with GFX files, you have a lot more headroom in terms of highlights before they're truly clipping. So high gamma range, I think is the word for that. Now we are going to just touch the exposure a little bit to try and really get those out. And I really do want to darken up this image as a whole. Okay, I'm okay with a little bit because even though I put this at the maximum, if I turn this off for a second, you can see these aren't really truly clipping. Okay, now here's the first little glimpse here to show you what I'm talking about with detail. That's a lot of detail. I mean, when we zoom out, and we zoom back into that point, but a couple notes. First off, this actually isn't the focus point. It's close to the focus point. The focus point is actually down here on the ruffles of these leaves right here. Now, again, it looks great. I mean, you can see those little tiny bumps here, which is pretty amazing, no matter how you look at it. But what we're going to do in a second here, after I get a little bit more into the darkness aspect of this, we're going to take down those shadows a little bit more now. We're going to take down the black just a tiny bit more. We're actually going to take the white up a tiny bit more, highlight down a tiny bit, contrast up a little bit, which will add a little bit of detail, brightness down a little bit, saturation up a little bit to really get those greens popping, as well as the pink. Okay, now again, we'll show you just what that did here as far as increase in detail. So again, this is the focus point right here. The way Capture One works, you don't really see that until you zoom in a ways that it really is the focus point. Okay, it's looking pretty good already. Now if we do a before and after here, this is where the image is coming from. This is a raw file though. Okay. And now we're going to get into what I'm really talking about here. I will eventually bring this whole image down more. Actually, we're going to do just a tiny bit down. Okay, right around there for now. bring up the highlights a little bit more. Oh, and put that exposure warning back on. Okay, so now I will turn that back off just to not be distracting. We're going to do a couple things here. One, we're going to do a very, very, very small dehaze. We're going to do a little bit of clarity. Just for now, we're going to bump these up quite a bit, but I'm just going to show you here. So we're going to take the structure up to 20. Okay, let's get back in there. Okay, it's coming. Okay, now you're seeing this. There's nothing crunchy, is the word I like to use for when things just get out of control in terms of how much detail you put into something. There's definitely detail here, but this still looks like a big giant leaf, which is what it is. This leaf is like a meter across. So now watch this. We're going to really take up the structure to something like 40. You see that? And we're going to ease the clarity up a little bit too, around 20-ish. Now, this is where my instincts say don't go any further, because you're just pushing it. You don't want this to look like a crunchy image, something that I've experienced again with full frame and micro four thirds where I go too far. But you see these textures coming in here now. So again, before and after. That's not a thing that wasn't actually there. So like the textures and the subtle tones that are coming in, if we reset that, see, we lose them. But by bumping this up, you're starting to see detail that is there. That's the thing. With the GFX files, they come out really remarkably flat in their raw files. I mean, that's what raw files do, but I don't know. I think a lot of cameras bake in detail in their raw files, despite what you would think. Raw files are not always truly raw files. I don't think Fuji really does that. I think they absolutely give you just a true raw file. And I should mention too, I don't do compressed raw files. It might be different if you do the compressed raw files in Fuji. I'm doing uncompressed, full raw files. So here we go. I've gone all the way up to 35 in clarity and 52 in structure. And the thing is, I'll say, is there's still no crunchiness here. This is still just pure detail. Now this is where the thing you have to keep in mind though is that detail is there, but are you losing some of your artistic vision? And this is where I would say yes. You look at the shape of the highlight roll-offs, you look at the just kind of texture of this plant, it starts to look not as natural. So that's where I do back it back down, something like 30 on this one, and 20-ish on the clarity. You can go up a little bit more on the dehaze if you'd like. You can go up a lot more of the dehaze if you really like. The dehaze also, by the way, does bring out a lot of detail because it just takes away, like this is, I believe, early morning after rainfall, or maybe not directly after rainfall, but it's been raining a lot that week, and there's a pond right under these giant lotus flowers. They're growing out of it. So there's just kind of that haze in the air, and it glistens on the leaves, like just humidity that's captured by the sun rays, and just the texture of these leaves too. They just kind of have a sort of haze to it. So I'm going to show you really quickly though, before we really just kind of get to a more artistic image. Just if we do take these all the way up even, now you can see it's getting crunchy back here. It's obviously over sharpened, but again, I just want to point out that the detail is there and it's pretty insane. Now, no, I do not like the way this looks, but I'm just trying to drive that point home that the detail of these files is truly insane. And I don't use that. I hate that buzzword actually. But they're let's just say it's astonishing how much detail is really hiding in these files. and it's something you don't get out of the JPEGs. I mean, I guess you could tune the JPEGs probably to, you know, peak sharpness within reason and such, and get something similar, but in my experience, it's really hard to get that from the JPEG. So now we're at a sort of comfortable zone here. And I'm actually going to go down, oh, excuse me, in the dehazing, reverse it a little bit just to bring a little je ne sais quoi into the image. Now, I would normally do vignetting on the image like this to kind of make the flower pop. And that looks not bad. And you know what, for this sake, I'll keep that, but I'm gonna undo this afterwards because I do all my vignetting in Darktable because it just allows more freedom to move around the points of where, you know, if I want less in this corner and more in this corner, I can do that a lot easier in Darktable. So now what we will do is we'll go into style, and we're gonna take this off the auto curve, which auto curve, as far as I can tell in Capture One, just at least with the Fuji files, always defaults to whatever you had it set. And the camera, which probably was Provia, there we go. So you see, if I go into Provia, Fujifilm Provia Standard, there's no change. Go to Nostalgic Negative, Pro Negative High. That's not a bad look at all. Velvia is going to be very poppy, but I tend to go down over here. High contrast. I don't usually use extra shadow unless I really have some issues with an underexposed image, for example. So this is a nice image, but what I think we're actually going to do here to again emphasize that detail is we're going to probably go with this first, Acros with the green filter, excuse me. I do really like these lighter color ones where it just kind of bleaches the flower out. But yeah, classic chrome looks great. I mean, this image is such a solid image. I was actually, this specific classic negative, I believe when I first did these photos, this was a year, I believe this was last year or 2 years ago. It's near my home. I visit it every year. But yeah, when I first edited this particular set, this was what I was really grooving on at that time. It's a pretty cool look. You know, it's a classic negative. It definitely has that vintage vibe, but at the same time, just partially because we're talking medium format, modern sensor, modern lens, it just has a very punchy yet nostalgic feel. I don't know how to say it. I like it. But we're gonna go back to that no, sorry, not the monochrome green filter. We're going to the Acros green filter. There we go. Now already I just love this image. We'll peek here again at some of this detail. You know, that's, once you go black and white, it's really going to show you how nice that is. And this tutorial is also just to kind of give you an idea of, I guess self-promotion for me is just when we're talking GFX files, and you might wonder if you go to my website, Film-Studio-Japan.com, just why are my pictures are more expensive than most. When you look at full-frame photographers, their prices versus medium format photographer, there's usually a pretty wide discrepancy, and that is, put simply, it's the detail. Not just the detail, but also what you're able to pull out of the files in terms of highlight, roll-off, colors, shadows, highlights that are basically never blown out unless I make a mistake. I almost never post a photo that has blown out highlights. I mean, that's not a bad thing. A lot of photos, it's actually even a stylistic choice, and that's the only time I do it is either a stylistic choice or an image that I did make a mistake with and overexposed slightly in the highlights, but the image is just so strong and it has to be captivating to me to where, like, I would print it for myself and most likely have. In that scenario, I would post it. But as you can see here, I mean, these highlights are perfectly controlled. I mean, look at here, it just goes so close to that range where it's just so close to overexposed, but it's not. So it gives it that just nice, beautiful glow here on the edge. And again, talking detail, every little bug bite here is exposed. I mean, perfectly in focus and detailed. Um, it's really amazing. What's also amazing is a lot of times in these photos, there will be a little bug that is visible on the flower or the leaves, but as far as I can tell, there's none of that. Could be one that's in the roll off or the bokeh slightly, but yeah, there's no obvious bugs in this image. Not that that's a bad thing when there are, but it's just kind of a cool thing here. It's just a very clean image. So anyways, yeah, I really like this one. This one was one that I kind of overlooked. I just today was going back through these and it's like, that's not a bad image. Like I tend to, at the beginning, I focus on the ones that are, either fuller blooms or larger pods. This is a fairly small pod. Um, by the way, this one is not ready yet. That's the thing. It'll grow a little bit bigger, and then what happens is in the morning they open, and then in the evening they close. They'll actually trap the bees and other insects inside there to make sure that they get a plethora of pollen on their bodies. So when they leave the next day, they'll pollinate away very well. Um, but yeah, and also when they open in the morning, especially if it's like the first time they open, they pop. They make a really distinguishable, like fairly loud pop sound because these are huge. The larger ones, just the bulb alone, even not open, is the size of like a child's basketball sometimes. This one is just like the size of my fist, but still. Yeah. Anyways, we'll show you to my other edit that I came out with again. So this was pretty good. I was pretty happy with this one. The style I used here was the film high contrast. I believe I pushed the detail even a little bit harder in this one. We'll see here, adjustments. So here we got, where are we? Yeah, structure's at 47, clarity's at 21, dehaze at 2. So comparatively, this one we took the dehaze up. I thought we took it down. I guess I reversed that, didn't I? We'll play with that for a second here. And I'm going to undo it just real quickly. Nope, I like that better. Anyways, so that's about it for this short tutorial, I guess you can call it, but also just kind of, again, showcase of what you can do with these GFX files. And I guess if you're working with a GFX and you don't see the detail, don't be afraid to squeeze it out, but again, do know, like, be honest with your eyes, like your eyes and your brain need to have a kind of a connection. I guess not everybody has the advantage. I grew up in nature. I've said it many times. I grew up in the rainforest of Northwest, and literally my backyard was just deep forest. And I ran around with other kids, and very, very magical little world. But I just, perhaps more than most people, I know what the textures and tones of nature look like, leaves and flowers and stuff, and I don't know. I'd say that's the other thing, is just study with your eyes. Like, if you're out there with a camera and the camera's always in front of your eye, take it down and really just spend 30 minutes just looking at the way the light hits things, because you're never gonna have a better lens than your eyes. And yeah, your brain works very, very amazing magic in how it visualizes and sees things and tells you what things are supposed to look like. So when you're editing, you're like, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like. It doesn't mean you can't put your own style into it, but it means that you have a starting point, particularly with the highlights and shadows. That's, I think, more than anything, really that matters, because, to toot my own horn here, I think you can see here, I don't know, YouTube always degrades things, but it's not just about the nice highlight. There's just, like, you can actually see the air, like, especially under here in the leaf and just behind it, over on this edge too. Like, there's just something when that light reflects and hits the air. It's that thing where you don't want to go too heavy with dehazing, and sometimes I go the opposite direction to bring it back. But words and such that I hope you understand. Again, here's where we came from. That's the raw file. This is now. Raw file now. So that's about it. I want to thank you for watching Film-Studio-Taku-in-Japan, or Film-Studio-Taku, Film-Studio-Japan.com. That's what I'm trying to say. My website is Film-Studio-Japan.com. Please check it out. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please like and share, and please like and share my website, because I would like to see, I'm trying to double my growth this month. I've been going pretty hard and getting about 30% growth every month, but I would like to see double the amount of visitors this month. So let's make it happen. Thank you for watching. I'm not much of a salesman, I know, but yeah, have a good one. Peace.